Hello everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to be diving into what I'm affectionately calling the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, also known as the worst blazing end habits. That's right, I'm having an intervention, because these habits still go unpunished for the most part, and I think it's beneficial for both sides to know about this. But before I get into those, I need to establish just how committal blazing end is to use. Unlike other projectiles in the game, Pyra is the only character that loses her ability to attack as soon as you send it out, meaning she can only move and use defensive options during this time, which is largely not an issue if blazing end connects. If it doesn't, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage, because now the opponent can close the gap for free, or worse. Furthermore, Pyra can't use her up special while the sword is gone, so keep that in mind too. There are 4 specific scenarios where Aegis players will use Blazing End, and I'll go over them one by one. First one on the hit list is Blazing End at a hit stun / Blazing End as a landing option. This is an autopilot habit for the most part. People do this with a bunch of different characters. The reason people do this is to stop the opponent in case they approach. It would really suck if the opponent didn't run into it, right? I think you can see why this habit in particular is incredibly flawed. Blazing End goes in a straight line, meaning as the opponent, you can almost always jump over it, and I want you to keep that in mind. Now, breaking a habit isn't easy, but instead of telling you to stop, I'll give you other options you can consider. Being aware is the first step after all. If you want to land normally and not have to tech on the ground from tumble, you can use up air since it auto-cancels really quickly, or you can use A landing with neutral air. Neutral air auto-cancels before the move comes out, so anywhere between frame 1 and 10. So you land normally instead of getting landing lag. It's very neat. Going to ledge or switching to mythra are also very valid options. I think that about covers the first horseman. Let's move on to the next. Blazing End in neutral. No, you heard that right. Blazing End in freaking neutral. I think this habit is a mix of I hope my opponent runs into it, I hope my opponent jumps into it, and nothing has happened in neutral for a while, let me pull the trigger and see what happens. The first 2 are predicated on guesses and reads, while the last one is usually due to losing patience or getting bored. And as I previously mentioned, Blazing End isn't a normal projectile and missing it will cost you. Again, as the opponent, jumping over Blazing End is your best bet. And if the Aegis player tries to jump in Blazing End to catch your jump, you can just run under it. If you didn't make it in time and they pick a defensive option, observe their defensive habits and punish accordingly. As for the Aegis players, I'm sorry, there is no easy solution. If you're looking to poke your opponent in neutral, you have other, healthier options like forward tilt, down tilt, and crossing up with aerials on shield. And I think that's all I can truly say on this habit. It's really notorious and people get away with it scot-free far too often. The remaining 2 horsemen are similar, but I'll divide them up all the same. Habit number 3 is Blazing End from the ledge. Drop down from the ledge. Double jump, Blazing End is a very common thing Aegis players do in hopes of getting you away from the ledge. Often as a panic option, I might add. I jokingly refer to it as the get out of jail free card because it works so often, both for me and the other Aegis players. Typically, Blazing End from the ledge comes out once the iframes run out, so if you need a timer or a visual indicator, there you go. Once again though, it loses to jumps because you can easily hop over it and hit Pyra. I consider this one of the worst habits because you use both your sword and your double jump in the process. If you get hit out of it, it becomes borderline impossible to recover since you no longer have access to your up special or your down special. So what do you do then? If you're on the ledge, you wait. The invincibility frames last for quite some time, and you can use that time to determine which option you're gonna pick. Observe your opponent, their ledge trap habits, and then you act. The final habit is Blazing End while recovering, and these 2 come in 2 forms usually. Blazing End, double jump and air dodge to ledge as a low recovery, or double jump, Blazing End, and air dodge to ledge as a high recovery. And while these two are both good recovery mix-up options, they both suffer from the same flaw. You can hit Pyra while she's throwing Blazing End. From above, from below, or from the side if you have enough range. Again, doing this is fine in moderation, you know, as a mix-up. But not every time. Alright, I have harped on long enough about these habits and how to deal with them. Let me actually give you some situations where Blazing End is useful. Blazing End is useful for, and not limited to, catching landings. Blazing End is a good way to put an active hitbox where your opponent is going to be. Usually when their double jump is spent and their trajectory is easier to deduce. Tech chasing. Because Pyra can struggle covering tech rolls away from her, Blazing End acts as an extension which makes it possible to do so. It's also fantastic for tech chasing on platforms. And lastly, edge guarding. Blazing End is a projectile, meaning you can punish your opponent offstage without putting yourself in harm's way. It very easily catches directional air dodges or attacks out of hit stun and resets the situation while dishing out damage. Best case scenario, your opponent loses their stock, because Blazing End becomes harder to DI the closer you get to the blast zones. And yeah, I think that's about all I wanted to say. My hope is that this video can help Aegis players and non-Aegis players alike deal with Blazing End better in their own ways. It's so frustrating seeing Aegis players get away with throwing out Blazing End again and again with no consequences, and I think that should change. Not because I have it out for the Aegis community, but because I love you guys and I want you to get better at the game. It's unfortunately a fact that horrendous Blazing End habits is what holds Aegis players back from truly developing a good Pyra. You can implement the funny footstool setup later. Get good at the game first. If you liked what you saw today, I have more videos you can watch right here. Thanks for watching, and happy pyraing.